Hi guys. I am going to do another video with the screen showing so that you guys can see the chapter 12 packet. And my understanding is that someone lost theirs and cannot find it. So we're going to go ahead and show the packets online in this video. Um, Again, this is chapter 12, looking at different data sets, economic decision making, and skills. Economic decision making requires logical reasoning about economic issues that affect our lives as consumers, producers, savers, investors, and citizens. Economic decision making engages us in the practice of analyzing costs and benefits, organizing economic evidence, and proposing alternatives to economic problems. Our state standard is economists compare data sets to draw conclusions about relationships among them. And um, we have in this chapter, when you're done, you should be able to define international trade, imports, exports, natural resources, economic indicators. You should be able to compare different data sets to see relationships and to draw conclusions about various pieces of data. The main idea of this content statement: economists study how goods and services are made and consumed. They study how people make their livings to support their needs. They also study how government policies and natural resources influence people's economic activities. Economists often look at and compare different sets of data: statistical numerical information such as population, annual production, average income, and the value of exports and imports or known oil reserves. They may use this data to determine what kinds of goods a country should produce, its exports, its imports, or its best trading partners. And then you can see I have a note down there that shows international trade. Exchanging goods and services between countries is the definition to that. Uh, as we move on, I wish I knew how to get this off of here, but I think that it would take away my whole screen, this little section here. Um, natural resources. Natural resources are materials found in nature, such as mineral deposits, soil, water, and oil reserves. Natural resources are an important ingredient in producing goods. Scientists can often estimate how much of a particular natural resource is available in a country. Natural resources are unevenly distributed. Not all countries have the same resources. They cannot produce the same things equally well because of different climates, landforms, and the availability of natural resources. And I did notice, like on your homework, that you guys had trouble with resources being unevenly distributed. You had a problem with that term. So please read through that section again and read why. It's not all countries have the same resources. So therefore they can't produce things equally, and their natural resources depend on their climate. It depends on their landform and the availability of the natural resource itself. Imports and exports. Each country tends to make particular goods based on the resources that it has. This fact greatly affects patterns of global trade. Japan, for example, has very little oil. The people of Japan need oil to power their factories, produce electricity, and to meet their heating needs. Since their country lacks oil, the Japanese must obtain it through other countries. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, has many major oil fields and 1/5 of the world's known oil reserves. It therefore has extra oil to export. Export, and here's one of your terms: export are goods and services sold by producers in one country to buyers in another country. Saudi Arabia export oils to other countries. In order to obtain oil from Saudi Arabia, Japan must sell some of its own products, such as cars, cameras, and televisions, to buyers in other countries. With the money Japan earns by selling these goods, its residents then are able to import oil from countries such as Saudi Arabia. Imports, again, another term, imports are goods from foreign countries brought into a country for sale or use. Japan imports oil from Saudi Arabia. A good way to remember it is exports are exiting the country. They're leaving the country. They're exiting the country. Imports are coming into a country. So their imports are coming into a country. If you kind of put that with it, you might have an easier time remembering it, because I noticed, again, there was a problem in the homework with these two particular terms. Each country keeps track of its exports and imports. Economists are therefore able to look at these data sets to see how a country's exports and imports are related to its resources. They can also look at data sets of exports and imports to see which countries would be a good trading partner. And then we go on, and we talked about this page right here in detail in another video, so I'm not going to go back over that again. You can see that I have the answer written in there for you. And then it goes on to population. You guys also seem to have a little bit of a problem with this area too, with the definitions for birth rate and mortality rate especially. So let's take a look at that population. Economists also look at data sets describing a country's population. For example, what is the total population of a country? What is the age distribution of its population? What is the average birth rate? Definition: people born in a year per 1,000 people. What is the average mortality rate? Definition: how many people die in a year per 1,000 people. What is the average life expectancy? Definition: years an average person lives. What is a literacy rate? Definition: what percentage of the population can read and write? Going on, we're at economy. Finally, economists often look at data sets concerning a country's production, how many goods and services it generally produces. These indicators also help measure a country's level of economic development. A country's gross domestic product, or GDP, is the total value of all the goods and services produced by people from that country in a single year. A country's GDP per capita is the country's gross domestic product divided by its population. This tells us the value of the production of an average person in that country in a single year. It also tells us the average income per person. It thus reflects the country's average standard of living. Countries with a high GDP per capita have more highly developed economies. Their populations are more educated, have more health care, and live longer. Another economic data set includes the percentage of a country's workforce involved in agricultural or manufacturing. Agriculture, remember, that means farming. Those two words are interchangeable. The types of crops they grow, and the number of farmers involved in subsistence farming. Definition: growing just enough to meet immediate family needs with little or no surplus to sell on the open market. Economists also compare data sets and draw conclusions. Look at the data sets below. And then the term economic indicators is a term you also needed to know, and that was the production, GDP, GDP per capita, and unemployment. We went over this section, and you guys had this for homework. And there was some trouble with some of you guys comparing and looking. I don't think you looked at the chart very well. And then some of you did an excellent job on this. But here are the three conclusions. And in your homework, I also went through and marked things that needed support and marked things that were correct so that you could study the correct answers for the test. But there is the key to that. Your page, and some of you have not turned these in yet. I strongly suggest you go to the Google Classroom, find these pages, because these do go into your grade, into the grade book, which I will be doing this week, and you will see what you're missing. Also, if you go into the Google Classroom, on the right-hand side, there will be a red missing for you. If you are missing your assignments, that's what it will say in the corner, is missing in red. But the directions on here said which terms or phrases does not belong with the other terms and phrases. In the space to the right of each box, identify the term or phrase that does not fit, then use the term or phrase in a sentence. And I have basic answers there. And again, right up here at the top, here's all three literacy, or all three boxes: literacy rate, mineral resources, oil reserves, and then it gives you sentences off to the side. This study card was also in the Google Classroom, and the students who've done this one, I've corrected it and given it back to you. Finally, bar graphs. In this section, you will be asked several questions about bar graphs. Let's review how to read and interpret bar graphs. A bar graph is made of parallel bars of different lengths. It is used to compare two or more things. A bar graph can also show how some items have changed over a period of time. And then it gives you a bar graph there of metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. And then it also gives you the countries down below: Germany, Japan, China, Russia, and the United States. Your title is, and that's what we should have read first, title is Countries with the Highest Carbon Dioxide Emissions 2013. Steps to understanding graphs. Parts of the bar graph. The title tells you what information is presented. This bar graph shows countries that emit carbon dioxide, a pollutant that affects the environment. The legend identifies what each bar graph represents. In this graph, a legend is not needed since all the bars represent the same thing: countries. Most graphs have a vertical and horizontal axis. The vertical axis runs along the left-hand side of the graph. It measures the height of the bars. In this graph, the vertical axis shows the amount of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere in metric tons. The horizontal axis runs along the bottom of the graph. It identifies what each bar on the graph represents. Here, they represent different countries. Locating information on a bar graph. To find information on a bar graph, you need to examine the specific features. For example, to find how much carbon dioxide China emitted in 2013, you need to first locate the horizontal axis. On the horizontal axis, find the bar that represents China. Next, slide your finger up the bar until you reach the top. Then, slide your finger to the left until you reach the vertical axis. You will see that China emits about 2,650,000 metric tons in 2013. And that would take care of this particular packet. We will be having a test over this packet on Wednesday. So please study. And for those of you that did not have the packet, well, you have it now. So you can go through this video. You can look the packet over. You can stop the video where you need to stop it. And you have the information to be successful. Have a good evening. And I will be in more videos soon.